Hi, this is Mark Margolis. I played Tio on Breaking Bad. And if you don't start listening to Mr. Media, I'm going to have to ding my bell.
Today on Mr. Media, I'll talk to novelist Stephen Gore. He's the author of 3 Graham Gage private detective thrillers, Absolute Risk, Final Target, and the latest, Power Blind. Stick around, and please don't get caught rigging Supreme Court nominations. Mr. Media is recorded live before a studio audience of TV PIs, including Spencer, Macmillan and wife, Columbo, and Fat Man, in the new media capital of the world, St. Petersburg, Florida. Finally, back in the business of reading the latest Graham Gage thriller by Stephen Gore. I was excited to discover the release of Power Blind, the latest novel serving up the adventures of private detective Gage. These books are the equivalent of popcorn movies for me, tasty and explosive, and I never want to stop till I get to the end. Now, when author Gore, himself a former globe-trotting PI, last dropped by the Mr. Media stage, I hadn't fully appreciated how hard he must work, not just plotting these stories, but getting the character names just right. Think about it. Listen to this. You got the brothers, Brandon and Landon. The aggrieved father, Porzolkiewski, whose name I don't even know if I'm getting right. It's that hard. Attorney Skeeter, research ace and local rock star Alex Z. Office assistant Tansy. Investigator Viz. Talk about local color. Or maybe everybody in imaginary San Francisco comes with crazy names. I don't know. Anyway, I'm delighted to welcome back to the show the author of Power Blind, Absolute Risk, and Final Target. Stephen Gore, welcome back.
Thanks for having me. It's good
Always
to see you.
Good to have you on TV. I understand this is your first Skype experience, so we'll try to be gentle and please keep your clothes on.
I promise.
Well, Steve, tell me about this predilection you seem to have for unusual character names. I mean, I wondered if you were that guy growing up, who would always provide the clever nicknames in your circle.
I wasn't, actually. When you write a book that has lots of characters, you need to make them distinctive. And that's the reason for those names. I mean, so you like Viz, he's a surveillance guy, so it's Viz, it's for vision, it's invisible. Exactly. Yeah. So you try to find a name. But Porzolkiewski I wanted sort of a friendly name. Reader may be prepared to view him ultimately as a bad guy, and I wanted to have sort of a friendly feeling about it. So Brandon and Landon is to remind the reader at all times that these guys are brothers. So that's the idea, and really it's also just being distinctive. Thrillers tend to have lots of characters, so give them names that are easy for people to remember.
Is it more pronounced in this third book than I didn't go back and look at the previous books, and we've talked before, but I don't remember. I mean, I remember Viz being in the book, and but I mean, I don't remember being as struck by the uniqueness of the names previously. Has it gotten a little more intense that way?
I don't know. In Absolute Risk, there were a few. Viz was in that character, Old Cat. I can't. I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Well, let me ask you this: do your friends and your associates over time, who predate your writing career, do they open these books and see elements of themselves, if not full out character profiles?
No, not really. If I base characters on people, it's not my friends. There is a character in the book, the judge, toward the end, where I use the name of one of my friends, because I think what I said in acknowledgments is she's of such good character I made her one. And so no, but I mean there is a sense of that characters are based on people in certain contexts. Like, sort of the judge is a composite of judges I've dealt with over the years. And the senator is a composite of politicians that we had as clients when I was still an investigator. So those, in some places, some scenes, in this book, a critical event is a refinery explosion. So that comes out of, days when I did investigations of refinery explosions. And we had one recently at the Chevron refinery here, which reminded me, it was very similar to the one that's in the book, and that the company knew they had a problem and decided, for whatever reasons, they were going to put off making the repair. In the book, it causes a horrible explosion. In one of the refinery investigations I did, that same kind of thing caused an explosion with, loss of life. So there are real aspects of it. And I try to put the books in locations where I've worked, because I want to give the reader the same. It's one thing to describe, someplace like Marseille or some, some foreign place, but it's a different thing if you can give the reader a feeling of what it's like to be there under pressure. So I try to, as much as I can, place these events in places that I've worked to make sure that feeling gets in.
I'm thinking I hadn't intended to do this, but I'm thinking I should probably ask you to describe a little bit about your life before writing the books, for people who may be joining us and haven't read a book yet, or maybe they've read the book but they don't know. Tell folks a little about your background, doing investigations before the second career hit you.
I started out years ago working for the courts, doing in what was called pretrial services, doing background investigations of defendants, particularly in sort of advising the judges regarding bail, what kind of bail to set, whether to release people without bail, what kind of a risk they represent. I started out there, that was in the 70s. 80s, I went to work for a public defender's office as an investigator. After a few years there, I'd pretty much done what there was to do in that world. And so I decided to go private. Starting out, like most people do, with street crimes, with drug cases and homicides and all that kind of thing. And about 25 years ago, I got a call from a lawyer and said, we've got this heroin importation case. We've got a couple of clients. We're not sure exactly how this thing was structured. Can you go find out? So off I went from the streets of East Oakland to suddenly being in Taipei and Bangkok, and caught a few breaks and things. Found out some things that turned out to be helpful to figure out how this deal was structured, what the levels of responsibility were of all these co-defendants, which was the issue. I mean, it wasn't an issue of guilt. It was a matter of sort of guilt, what levels of guilt, who did what did they know at the time. So I caught some breaks and was able to find some people and track down the fugitive from China that was involved in the thing, and met with members of the syndicate that put the deal together, being able to figure out some of the money trail. And so it was possible to allocate among the parties who did what. It was one of these cases where I was the investigator for almost all of the defendants in the case. There was some shared feeling that that's really what we needed to do, was figure out who did what. So it worked, and word got around, and I'm in a word-of-mouth business. I was in the it isn't the kind of thing where you advertise.
Right.
You only want to work for people who know who you are and have the same kind of standards you do about the work. So the word spread, and from then on, by the time I decided that I had enough, I was spending about 6 months a year out of the country. And then we did, corruption cases, we did money laundering, stock fraud, homicides, whatever. We had clients were, political officials from around the world. The last one, probably the one that broke the camel's back, was the fellow who was Prime Minister of Ukraine, who was quite corrupt. But then again, it was an issue of what he did where and who had jurisdiction. So that kind of broke the camel's back. It was tough. I was getting older. One night we had a confrontation, me and my interpreter and my driver, with some state security people, and I realized that all these people on the other side were 30 years younger than me. And, I'm not that old. I'm only, early 60s, but in that world, it's for younger, faster, stronger people. And after that confrontation, got back to where we were staying. Interpreter comes up to me and says, "I didn't sign up for this."
So who's the smoother traveler, you or Graham?
The smoother traveler.
Well, I mean, the reason I ask you that is that one of the things that strikes me is reading the books is Graham travels. Like, he'll just travel at the drop of a hat. Something comes up, he's in India, or he's in Russia, or he's wherever he is, and he seems to rebound very easily, and he seems to handle language issues and currency issues. Everything is very smooth to him. And I thought, wow, I wonder if Steve was that smooth as that guy, or is he given Graham these characteristics that he wished that he had had himself?
Well, no. I mean, you've got to be that way. You have to be able to move quickly, and know currencies, and you can't. I guess that's part of what I try to do in these books. Is in the typical private eye book, you've got a character who's always overcoming obstacles, and which of course the reader wants. But in real life, when you get hired, you're hired not to overcome obstacles, but to avoid them. So it's if you don't learn how to move quickly, then you're not going to succeed. I mean, there was one trip that I took. If I can't remember I'm not sure I can remember the itinerary. Started out in London. That's where I knew where step one was. Then to Kiev, then out to eastern Ukraine, far eastern Ukraine, back to Kiev, back to London, to Hong Kong, to Chennai, India, back to London, to Amsterdam, to Geneva.
You're wearing me out, Steve.
And I think home. But if there's a witness someplace, you just get on a plane. You figure it out when you get there. And with enough years in the business, you learn the shortcuts. You know who to hire where, who to hire to meet you someplace. I mean, there's interpreters in the States that they're ready to move to. You call them up and say, look, can you meet me in Beijing? They'll meet you in Beijing. So, and as time went on, it got easier and easier. By the end of my career, if you had a laptop or a cell phone, you could make reservations to go anywhere, get your hotel, get your flight. I always had, even before these phones became usable overseas, I always had a GSM phone that I always had ready charged, ready to go. Somebody calls up, says, "Can you go to Milan?" You go to Milan. I mean, it's just, and you come back. You know.
I admire that. I completely admire the ability to do those things and travel and just float in and out of these situations. I could never do it. I just know it's just not me. I would be, you know, your life doing that. If they made a movie, it would be a drama. Mine would be like a comedy. It would be,
well, because you traveled mostly for fun, for vacation.
Yeah.
And for vacation, you know, if they say half the fun is being there. If you get lost, so what?
Right.
You find yourself. You know, so you have a little adventure on the side. When you're working, it's, you know, a little more serious. There are, you know, adventures you have, but yeah, I mean, it's sort of an interesting thing, and I've been thinking a lot of is this whole genre business. You know, I had a lot of trouble learning how to write these things because it's the genre is so much different than real life. In real life, investigators, at least the good ones, lower tension wherever they go. Readers want tension raised.
Right.
The same thing with obstacles. They don't want you to, you know, readers want the character to overcome an obstacle. Clients want you to avoid it. They want you to get it right the first time, not keep beating your head against the wall until you finally succeed. So what I tried it with Gage is make him realistic enough. So, you know, did you ever read Ross MacDonald?
Sure. Yeah, many years ago, but sure.
Guy is absolutely brilliant because that's something that he understood. When you look at Archer, when he goes into a scene, he's not the one that raises the tension. He exposes it.
Right.
You know, Michael Connelly does that a lot too. I mean, sometimes his character will come. I mean, but the boss character especially, it's a little bit different with his lawyer character. But the boss character, Connelly finds the potential for conflict and tension in the scene and draws it out. He doesn't use Bosch to go in and tear things up, unless there's some strategic reason to do it. Just like in real life, if you just come in leaning on some witness, they're not going to talk to you. It's lower tension. If there's a need to raise it, then at some appropriate moment you raise it for some specific reason. But so it was hard to learn how to come up with a style that was both realistic and would still keep the reader's interest.
Right. Well, and let me just interrupt for just a second and say that if there are folks watching this interview or listening who are Michael Connelly fans, go to MrMedia.com and look up Michael Connelly because I've got an interview with him on the site. Just a little commercial for Mr. Media to interrupt.
Right.
So yeah, I mean the thing is, you're dealing with a private investigator here in Gage who, I mean, generally you get the sense that he would like to solve things with data and information and observation. That would be a smooth day for him. That would be a day gone well, where he didn't have to, nobody had to be running and chasing down the hill. It's not that he's against it, but you know, he's got this operation set up to function in that manner, right?
He'd like to get it right the first time.
Yeah. But something always has to happen to propel the story, you know, and it just doesn't quite work out the way he would hope it would. And so, you know, and chaos ensues, and that's what makes the story interesting.
Well, in real life, chaos sometimes does ensue. Situations develop that you don't have much, you don't have any control over.
Yeah.
And I was in Peshawar, you know, up near the Khyber Pass, and during some very tense days, and I had to go up there for something, and had to go to Pakistan for something, and then the trail ended up leading up there, and so I'm sleeping in my hotel room. I look out, have a nice view of the city, and then kablam! The Taliban blew up some Afghan general on the street outside the hotel. That sort of interrupts your day.
Yeah, I would think so. Is that and when that happens, do you decide, that San Francisco is looking pretty good to me right about now?
Well, San Francisco always looks good.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. The tendency is to avoid. It's interesting. When people talk about investigation, they almost always use hunting metaphors. Hunting for a witness. But that's not right. It's more like fishing. Because you really don't want to disturb. You want to disturb the water as little as possible. Get in, get out, and don't leave much of a trace of yourself, unless it's necessary to haul the fish in. So he's more of a fisherman than he is a hunter. But there are things he can't control.
Right. Now, this book, Powerblind, it's got an interesting. It takes us on an interesting tour. We have local intrigue in San Francisco. We have sexual trafficking in India. We have White House corruption. I really, maybe next time you could think a little bit bigger. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah. At the moment, I get it. Was really interested in this whole, what's the step past Citizens United, and that's what kind of structured the book.
Right.
How do you get to the point where you move the court to where it says direct contributions are fine?
Yeah.
Where you open up basically it was the Gilded Age again, and I think that's where we're heading. Where industries bought senators. You had a steel senator and a coal senator, and I think we're heading that way. So what sort of structures the main part of the plot is, there are 2 empty seats on the Supreme Court. How do you get people in there? How do you finance getting them in there? How do you get the votes for them? And then how do you cover your tracks later? And so you've got this conspiracy, and at the same time you have, you've got 2 things. One is a father who suffered a terrible loss, who's trying to find out the truth, and Gage's heart goes out to him. It's really Gage's heart going out to him that moves the whole plot.
Right.
There are... Sorry.
No, please, go ahead.
There are... Investigation in the real world has... at the upper level, there are kind of 2 halves. There's the sort of the Gage half, and then there's the corrupt half. There are investigators that are hired to find out what the truth is and see some justice done, and those that are hired to suppress the truth or distort the truth or create some false truth to make sure justice isn't done. And, and everybody in the legal community, we only work for law firms. We didn't work for private partners. Everybody in the legal community knows who's who. And, you call one person, you've got a problematic witness, you send your investigator out, find some dirt on that witness, intimidate them so they won't testify, won't come forward, or if they have come forward, to back off. And then there's the sort of the straight shooter types. That's what we were, and that's what Gage is based on. I don't think people, comprehend how dirty this business can be. They don't know what that world is like, and what I hope in Powerblind is to show people. There are investigators who are hired not to investigate, but to intimidate.
Right. There is a definite political undercurrent to this book. And I found myself dog-earing pages that seem to be sending a message here and there about things that are going on very currently, whether it's Citizens United or other things. But I couldn't quite nail the point of view, whether it was a right-wing, left-wing, libertarian. I just couldn't. Can you help me there? Or do you want to?
Oh no, that's fine. I'm sort of a left-oriented person. But if you present characters, whatever their persuasion, sympathetically. I think that's the important thing. So you don't, so your political view doesn't get pounded because it's about character. I mean, the person that the reader might want to see as the bad guy, this Landon Meyer. I present him as a guy who's good-hearted. I think he's wrong every which way, but I sort of present him in a sympathetic way because he suffers from a very human problem, which is this. The Greeks called it missing one's mark. In the book, I have him refer to St. Augustine. That's when Augustine talks about original sin, that's what he's talking about, blindness in human action. That's what the title's from, power blind, where you think you're doing one thing, but you're really doing something else. That's normal life, I mean, we think we're doing some good thing, and then somewhere down the road, some fact shows up that gives us a new perspective on what we've done, and we say, geez, what did I think I was doing? So if you present, and also his problem, there are places in the book where I kind of slow it down, and at one point where he asks himself, something he presented to Gage was wondering whether Republicans went wrong when they turned from James Fenimore Cooper to Ayn Rand. Well, sort of his view is we should have kept reading James Fenimore Cooper, because if you read Cooper, then you've got to think about American things. You've got to think about, nature. You've got to think about Indians. You've got to think about, the environment and industrialization and democracy and all these things that we still struggle with. When you go the Ayn Rand route, you sort of it's without context. Self-interest is a moral good. Well, it's kind of a limited moral good. I think Ayn Rand was really smart. I mean, really, really smart. I went to grad school in political philosophy at Berkeley years ago, and what makes an important political philosopher is that they think things out further than political philosophers who are not so great. I mean, Hobbes applied Newtonian mechanics to politics. Other people tried the same thing. We remember Hobbes because he thought it through further than anybody else. And I think Ayn Rand thought through sort of that philosophy of self-interest further than anybody else. And that's why people still read her. I think her premises are wrong, but that's why she's worth knowing about. And I think people who want to take a little bit of her and apply it to political life need to think again about, she understood what the consequences of what her thinking was. Well, people who take a little got to figure out, well, maybe they've trapped themselves all the way to the end, and what kind of society that really would turn out to be. So he struggled with that stuff.
Well, I think, and I apologize because I didn't dog-ear this particular page, but at one point you have Gage thinking, I'm trying to remember how this went, but there was a remark, and maybe it was regarding Landon, how he kept referring to something that he kept quoting, but that if he had only read the rest of the way, he would have come away with a very different point of view. Was that Cooper, or was that St. Augustine?
It was, I think it was St. Augustine.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Oh, no, but that was it was Gage and his lawyer friend talking about Hobbes, and where they picked part of Hobbes and asked the Buddhist short and all this kind of stuff, and they quoted something. Landon quoted something, I guess, and I think Gage or his friend says, well, I guess he didn't get to the part where
right.
Talks about corporations as some germ in the entrails of society, some critical. I mean, because Hobbes was very critical of corporations.
Interesting. Well, all right. So let's, as we come full circle here and we start winding down, let's talk a little bit about writing the books themselves. Can you look back to your first book, and now you've published your third? You
Actually, fourth.
Was this the fourth book?
I have another series with a character called Harlan Donnelly, who's the former detective who gets retired out of the department. Those are all very domestic, sort of street crime kind of investigations. Gage is international, and this guy is domestic.
All right, I didn't realize about that. So, well, the question though is similar, and now it actually covers more of a book. But can you point to where your writing has changed or evolved and gotten better over the years? Where, things that you've learned from doing?
I think it's not it's not original thought, but I think the more you write, the more you find sort of your own voice, and I guess you don't try, well, you don't over try, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You don't try too hard to do, sort of to do too much. And you find what kind of style fits your voice and the way you think. I see a lot of writers, particularly new writers, just trying too hard, pushing the material. And it's more letting the material speak for itself. Sort of finding. Another thing, I think Connolly is good, and Dennis Lehane is good, and Ross McDonald and Graham Greene. They have the ability to really see into the scene that they're writing about, and that's what I think I've gotten better at, because it's all there. It's really, it's looking hard enough into it, so you can so you can display it to the reader, in terms of not just the facts, but the what the things that are there, but the feelings they generate. So I think I'm getting better with that. This writing thing isn't easy. And I think the people who say it takes 500,000 words to get your voice, I think they're right.
Well, you must be right at that number, considering you told me before we went on that you finished the fourth Gage book already, right?
Right.
And so that'll be your fifth book?
That'll be 5.
So that's about 500,000 words?
Well, it's actually the 500,000 words are before you get to that book 1.
Oh, because I see. You'd already been writing. You got stuff in drawers. In the sense, yeah, writing and rewriting and rewriting and rewriting, setting something aside, coming back to it, and then, and then you're better as you go through it again and again, and revising and revising and writing new stuff. And I write short stories and. Yeah, it's a lot of words until you finally, because I save all that stuff and I go back to the first things I've written, and I really cringe, and I go back to Final Target and I can see lots of things that I could have done differently, should have done differently, and in a certain way, when I get emails from people who, even now you still get emails, people find the book and say nice things about it, I'm always a little embarrassed because you think about, because you learn more, and then you see what you could have done better. Well, let's wind up here. Has Hollywood come calling yet?
No, and I haven't really gone looking either.
Really?
Maybe I should. Actually, the Donnelly series would be much more Hollywood-like because it has a Hollywood connection. With its character's father is a famous movie director, very kind of self-deceiving movie director, and this guy Donnelly becomes a cop, in reaction to that. His father's life of fiction, and the kid saying, "I want to live in a world of fact." So he becomes a police officer. That may be more interesting, but I haven't gone looking. And,
for what it's worth, anybody watching, I think Gage would make a good TV series. I just want to say, or maybe better suited because of the international locales as a film series. But either way, I think it's very cinematic. I think that's why I enjoy it. So.
Good. Well, I'm glad you like it. It really is a thrill. I mean, it really is.
Well, that's why you're back here. I only talk to people I'm interested in and whose work I like. And I ate this up. I really, there were moments I had to put it down simply because there were other things I had to get done. But otherwise, I mean, I pretty much read straight through. So yeah, I like it a lot. And I like the previous books too. So, all right. Well, folks, listen. You can find Stephen Gore's latest thriller, Power Blind, great bookstores everywhere, or you can order it right now at a great price at mrmedia.com, mrmedia.com. Look for the link on the page. Website, I think it's Stephen with a V, StephenGore.com.
Right, exactly.
And are you on Twitter or Facebook as well?
I've got a Facebook page. I think it's Stephen Gore Books. I'll do better keeping it up.
All right, so go on there, find him on Facebook, and send him notes. Make him work a little harder. Well, Steve, always a pleasure to have you on. Delighted to be your first Skype conversation, and thank you as always for joining us on Mr. Media today.
Good. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's fun.
You can see and hear almost 1,000 Mr. Media interviews by visiting our main site, mrmedia.com, mrmedia.com. Or check out the more than 200 video interviews on the Mr. Media radio site on YouTube. And I'd sure appreciate if you'd show some love for Mr. Media's advertisers, including Stitcher. Apple named Stitcher a top 5 news app of 2011. It's a free mobile app for your smartphone or tablet that lets you listen to your favorite shows and discover the best of news, entertainment, and sports on demand. You can listen whenever you want to more than 5,000 shows, get customized recommendations, and discover what your friends are listening to. My own list of Stitcher favorites is pretty eclectic. I start my day with an hour of MSNBC's Morning Joe with Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski. Then it's the latest 2-minute update from the Onion News Network. After that, I'll listen to WTF with Mark Maron, Here's the Thing with Alec Baldwin, HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher, and excerpts from E's Chelsea Lately and The Soup with Joel McHale. Also in regular rotation on my Stitcher playlist, the BS Report with ESPN's Bill Simmons, the TechCrunch headlines, and the Don Geronimo Show. The latest episodes of each show, whether originating from broadcasts, cable TV, radio syndication, or podcasts, are continuously updated. Stitcher is a free app for your iPhone, iPad, Kindle, Fire, BlackBerry, Droid, and more. And show your support of Mr. Media by getting, did I mention it's free? The app at Stitcher.com/Mr. Media. That's Stitcher.com/MRmedia. Stitcher Smart Radio, the smarter way to listen to radio. We're also supported by Audible. Check out Audible's 30-day trial membership and download the audiobook version of the book everyone's been talking about, 50 Shades of Grey by E.L. James. Sign up for your free trial today at audible.com/radio. Again, audibletrial.com/radio. And finally, if you need a disc jockey for a wedding, bar mitzvah, corporate event, or just a big old party, please consider calling 1-800-DIAL-DJs, the party authority for all your party entertainment needs. You can call 1-800-DIAL-DJs or go to their website, 1-800-DIAL-DJs.com, and tell them Mr. Media sent you. And thanks for listening.